I'd like to begin this week's reflection speaking a little bit about one of my favorite saints. If you've seen any of these other videos that I've done in the past, you know I've mentioned her quite often. And that saint is Saint Teresa of Calcutta, more commonly known as Mother Teresa. Saint Teresa of Calcutta suffered a terrible darkness of the soul. For 50 years she lived without the consolation of Jesus, but with great faith and longing for him, she persevered in the work that we all could see in public media. What we saw of her was not the inner struggle that she went through all those years. She wrote a great deal of letters to her spiritual director and personal papers that were compiled after her death into a book appropriately titled, "Come, Be My Light." And it was in these letters, which were mostly found after her death, that we learned that she struggled to live through and embrace such a dark period in her life. Her experience is often considered to be one of the longest recorded periods known as the Dark Night of the Soul. I mentioned that a little bit last week. And we will touch on briefly later this month. But Saint Teresa would go so far as to say that she actually embraced and loved this darkness because, as she said, it was in part, a very, very small part of what Jesus suffered, of his pain and darkness as he walked this earth. She once said, and this is another of her famous quotes, "If I ever become a saint, I will surely be one of darkness. I will continually be absent from heaven to light the light of those in darkness on earth." Mother Teresa was willing to relinquish the joys of heaven for the sake of those of us who often lie awake at night wondering where God has been in our lives. So why do we need a patron saint of darkness? Well, if we are intentionally walking that Christian journey and following that path that Christ has asked us, we are eventually going to find out if we haven't already. On her life's journey, Mother Teresa knew what to expect physically. She knew what she was going to experience emotionally by spending time among the destitute and the dying. She was prepared for that part of her journey. What she was not prepared for was that spiritual darkness that she encountered shortly after she arrived. But yet she looked to the light constantly as she pushed through that darkness. She found the light of Christ in those around her, the light of the world that we are called to be. She found the light of Christ in Scripture and in prayer. She found the light of Christ in his glory. All of those things that we've talked about during the month of January. She befriended many of her sisters and they became her confidants. And she shared her struggles with several spiritual directors, always going back in prayer, always asking God to help her through that time of darkness. One of her very best and closest friends while she walked this earth was another saint, Saint Pope John Paul II. They were the closest of friends, and we can only imagine how much they supported each other in their own emotional and spiritual journey. Saint Mother Teresa, our saint of darkness, our saint who will come down from heaven and lead us through our own personal darkness. It's what she knows she's been called to do. She is a joy for all of us. She is a light that we can all look to, a role model, an example of someone who suffered greatly, but yet continued to trust, continued to love, continued to walk in the light of love, the light of God, the light of Christ. May we use that saint of darkness as an example for us and also as motivation for us, those of us who are currently struggling in our own personal darkness. May we go to her in prayer and seek out that holy saint of darkness to be that light for us on our journey as well. Pray for me. I pray for you. And blessings from St. Elizabeth Ann Seton.